a speed faster than sound. The swept-back wings, the sharply angled tail are shapes common to all aircraft operating near the sound barrier. The Super Sabre is capable of carrying an atomic bomb, but its basic mission is to support troops on the ground. Another fighter built for another purpose, the F-102. Note the sharply swept-back delta wing. The F-102 operates on both the slow and fast side of the sound barrier. In the thin air above 50,000 feet, one solution to the problem of maneuverability is a large winged surface. In size, this one-man plane is only slightly smaller than the B-17 bomber of World War II. The F-102, crammed full of radar, has this mission. By day or by night, seek out the enemy bombers and shoot them down. The F-100 is a fighter bomber. The F-102 is an all-weather interceptor. Yet, fast as these planes are, we need a fighter beyond them. A plane designed in the same tradition as the Spads and Fokkers, the Mustangs and Spitfires, an air superiority weapon. We need the highest, fastest airplane in the world. This is that plane. The F-104 Starfighter. Speed, classified. But this airplane is supersonic in a climb. The Starfighter is a missile with a man in it. Here are two sister ships, the first two experimental models. The tail rides high. The wings are only 7.5 feet long, straight-edged, razor-sharp, so small it seems incredible that they can support an airplane. But the plane flies. It flies so fast that it approaches the thermal thicket, the heat barrier that lies far beyond the sound barrier. The Starfighter flies for only one purpose: to get a gun or a missile within firing range of the enemy. A fighter is a flying gun platform. What are the problems when the platform is above 50,000 feet and the plane travels faster than sound? In December of 1954, the F-104 is undergoing firing tests. Before the run begins, the Starfighter is surrounded by camera planes. Within the plane, cameras record the instruments, the pilot, for a permanent record. Everything has been checked out. Everything seems routine. In the cockpit, Tony LeVere, Chief Engineering Test Pilot for Lockheed.
Orbit 5, this is 787. I'm ready to fire.
A high-speed camera mounted under the wing records the ejection of the shells. The Starfighter is out of sight, 60 miles northeast of Edwards Air Force Base.
Yeah, there he goes.
What the hell? I'm in serious trouble.
What is it, Tony?
I don't know. The gun stopped and the whole plane started to buck. It's getting rougher than a cob in here.
The engine is uncontrollable. The plane begins to vibrate badly. LeVere has 40 seconds to decide whether he can bring it under control or whether he must bail out.
Archie, the engine's quit. I'm down to 39,000 feet and heading for the base. I don't think I'm going to make it, but I'm going to give it a try.
39,000 feet and 40 miles to glide. 40 miles on 15 feet of wing. Theoretically, it is possible, but no man has tried it.
I know Tony, he can make it.
Archie, I'm not too far away. I think maybe I can make it now. Get the meat wagon out and have the boys all ready.
Okay, Tony. Crash crew standing by on the lake. Good luck, boy.
It depends on the glide slope. too shallow a glide and the plane may stall out and spin in. Too steep and he may not make the runway. LeVere sets up his glide. He can still bail out. In another few seconds, he will be too close to the ground. The pilot still does not know what has happened. The cockpit reeks of jet fuel. There are two dangers. First, that he will not make the field. Second, that an electric spark will ignite the escaping fuel. The plane is totally without power. No one has ever made a dead stick landing in an F-104, but LeVere commits himself to land. Standard procedure, get outside the explosion radius, the Starfighter can still explode. LeVere has saved his life and his plane. By bringing the plane back, it can be studied to see what went wrong. This is the purpose of flight tests, to uncover minor flaws in the operation of the plane, to correct them before turning the plane over to the Air Force for operational flying. What went wrong is immediately apparent. There has been an explosion inside the gun compartment. Behind the gun, a hole into one of the main fuel tanks. An ejected cartridge has ripped through the back plate of the gun and torn into the fuel tank behind the gun. The malfunction was in the gun and not in the airplane. 4 months later, the XF-104 is readied for a high-altitude supersonic firing test. At dawn, the desert air is clear and smooth. Takeoff will be after sunrise. This firing test will be flown by Herman Salmon, Lockheed's engineering test pilot. Salmon and LeVere have discussed every aspect of LeVere's accident. The plane has been flown during the past few months, and the gun is checked out perfectly. Salmon checks all control surfaces, the high horizontal stabilizer, leading edge flaps, dive brakes, and trailing edge flaps. The dry lake bed sets up a mirage. The Starfighter seemingly rises from a pool of water. Starfighter climbs at a fantastic rate. In a matter of seconds, it will top 30,000 feet. The plane is followed throughout its flight by ground-based radar. The F-104 is at altitude.
Number 5, this is 787. Approaching Mojave range, altitude is 40,000. I've cleared within Current Tower, starting my firing run.
Okay, Fish. Let us know how the first burst goes.
Everything's just like silk, Archie. The first burst went off very smoothly. Everything's real good and I'm making my climb to 47,000. Over.
All right, you're 787.
Number 5, this is 787, starting my second run at 47,000 feet.
Once again, an explosion. The plane is out of control. Salmon fights with stick and rudder, trying to pull the nose up. A fixed camera in the nose records the descent. At 20,000 feet, the pilot abandons the plane. As the crashed trucks head for the wreckage, search parties go out to look for the pilot. No one knows whether the pilot is alive or dead. High-speed bailout is dangerous. The force of the airstream is capable of breaking bones. The pilot is found in the desert. He is uninjured. The plane is a total loss. From the wreckage, it can be determined that the causes of Levere's and Salmon's accidents are not the same. What precisely went wrong, nobody knows, except perhaps Salmon himself. But events went by almost too quickly for him to remember. Salmon volunteers to submit to a sodium pentothal examination. He would try to relive those few moments from the time he fired the gun until he bailed out.
What happened then?
Explosion, terrific explosion. It's cold in the cockpit. My pressure suit is inflating. I can't see much. I'm going down.
The engineers are reasonably certain what caused the accident, but there is still some doubt. Narcosynthesis may bring one pertinent fact out of Salmon's subconscious to confirm the evidence they already have.
Go on, Herman. What else happened?
I can't see. The debris and dirt and stuff is flying around the cockpit. I can't see. I gotta get this faceplate off. I'm going down.
What is the stuff in the cockpit, Herman?
Oh, just dirt and debris is blowing all over the place. I'm cold. There's a cold air flowing through the cockpit.
What's your altitude now, Herman?
I'm at 20,000 feet. I'm trying to get my feet in the stirrups. I can't see too much.
Do you see a hole in the bottom of the ship, Herman?
This is the key question. If Salmon confirms that there was a hole in the bottom of the ship, it means the gun blew the hatch open.
A lot of breeze coming in through here. A lot of wind.
Is There's a light coming into the ship.
When I see a light underneath me, here goes the seat. I'm falling.
The fact that Salmon saw a light underneath him means that the hatch below his feet was jarred open by vibrations set up by the gun. The gun will have to undergo further modifications. The gun is a 20mm cannon with 6 rotating barrels. Its rate of fire is classified, but it shoots more shells per minute than any cannon in the world. High-speed cameras magnify time, slowing down the action. The vibration of the gun is studied. On the right side of the screen can be seen the gun gas which contributed to Salmon's accident. The gun is mounted in the nose of the tied-down Starfighter. The problem is to find a way to exhaust the gun gas before it can collect and explode. This problem is solved. Every engineering detail of the Starfighter is the result of thousands of hours of study and design. An airplane is a functional design. Every line, every shape has meaning and purpose. The most radical feature of the Starfighter is its wing. Beyond the speed of sound, the air is a solid, not a gas. Lockheed's engineers have designed a wing whose proportions are that of a razor blade. The sharp, thin leading edge is intended to cut the plane's passage through solid air. Before the Starfighter got its wing, many shapes were tested. 5-inch rockets carried scale replicas of different wing shapes. Cameras mounted on the rockets photographed the behavior of each wing in supersonic flight. You're looking back at the Earth, down the tail of the rocket. This hollow wing flutters badly. This swept-back wing vibrates badly as the rocket passes through the sound barrier. With each firing, the supersonic wing comes a step closer to its final design. The pod on the left is a model of a wing tank designed to carry fuel. This wing is almost stable in all areas of speed. This is the final shape of the Starfighter wing. It is a controversial design which not all aircraft engineers have accepted, but it works for the Starfighter. The radical tail surface was similarly tested. On the Starfighter, the span of the tail surface is equal to that of a wing. In fighter aircraft, the landing gear is always a problem. To keep weight down, the gear must be designed as small and light as possible, but it must be able to withstand many times the plane's weight. In a series of drop tower tests, the landing gear is subjected to shocks far in excess of any it will experience in actual use. Over 20,000 cycles of lowering and lifting are made to test each part of the landing gear. One of the problems caused by the Starfighter's high-flying tail is that of pilot escape. If the pilot were ejected upward, he might strike the tail. Thus, a radical departure in fighter ejection seats. The seat is designed to eject downwards. It has taken 5 years of design and test. 5 years after Lockheed put the first Starfighter plans on paper, the first production model is delivered to the United States Air Force. The testing is not over. Lockheed will continue to modify the plane, but now the Air Force has its first Starfighter. The plane is accepted at Edwards Air Force Base, Flight Test Center of the Air Research and Development Command. LeVere says that the Starfighter is easier to fly than any other jet he has ever flown. There are always points of difference between pilots and engineers, but in the main, these have been solved. Herman Salmon, long recovered from his accident, turns the plane over to Captain Lou Schock, test pilot for the Air Research and Development Command. Now begins the military testing. How will the Air Force use this plane? Can it be safely flown by young second lieutenants just out of flying school? The F-104 is only about half the weight of other fighter aircraft. Its cost is only about half that of other current jet fighters. Yet it is the fastest operational jet in the world. Until this date, the plane has been called the XF-104. X for experimental, F for fighter, 104 for the 104th fighter the Air Force has planned. But today, the X is dropped. The Starfighter is no longer experimental. It has been commissioned by the United States Air Force. There is one question that cannot be answered for several years. Is the Starfighter just another shape, merely one more airplane in a long line of fighters? Or is it the end of the line for manned fighter aircraft? The Starfighter is already capable of reaching the extreme limits of altitude for fighter maneuverability. It is already capable of as much speed as is consistent with firing accuracy. Designers believe there may be one more round of manned fighter aircraft, not too different from the F-104. But the Starfighter is reaching the limits of man's ability to build fighter aircraft.
In December 1951, after Lockheed Corporation aircraft designer Clarence Kelly Johnson returned from meetings with U.S. Air Force pilots fighting over Korea, he was committed to developing the world's fastest and highest flying fighter. The specifications for the Lockheed Starfighter were finalized in 1952, and it took its inaugural flight in 1954. The last F-104 to be produced rolled off the assembly line in 1983. In the early 1950s, with the Korean War imposing new demands on U.S. aircraft, designers were faced with a challenge regarding the available engines. A new era of engine technology was in its infancy, with development still at very preliminary stages and timelines for availability uncertain. Consequently, the designers faced a dilemma, whether to proceed with the currently available but somewhat limited power plants or to await the potentially lighter and more powerful engines still in development. At Lockheed, under the leadership of Kelly Johnson, renowned for heading one of the world's premier design teams, the approach oscillated between lightweight concepts utilizing existing jet technology and significantly heavier, more potent designs based on anticipated advancements in engine capabilities. Johnson's association with Lockheed began during the Electra's development, where he supervised certain wind tunnel tests at the University of Michigan. His keen insights and constructive critiques of the new aircraft drew the attention of Lockheed engineers. He was hired by the company, and it was his work on developing the Electra and the subsequent Hudson bomber into success stories that gave him a rapid rise. His innovative and intuitive work brought great rewards for the company. The P-38, with its unorthodox long-range capabilities and enjoyable flying experience, exemplified his unconventional approach to design solutions. It proved both a successful aircraft and a profitable venture, manufactured in significant quantities. The distinctive twin booms of Lightning symbolize the pace and daring of aviation development in the 1930s. However, with the conclusion of the war, activity slowed considerably, particularly in military aviation, with the most attention focused on new jet engines and civil aviation, albeit with limited funding. Contrary to the post-war trend in many countries, the USSR continued to advance rapidly in fighter plane design. A plethora of new designs emerged, although some proved inadequate initially. Eventually, Russia began producing highly impressive military aircraft in large quantities. The prevailing Western perception that Russians lagged behind in design and industrial competence was shattered when MiG-15s appeared in the skies over Korea, surprising many with their advanced capabilities. Under pressure to contend with the MiGs and their sabers, U.S. pilots clamored for revolutionary aircraft to regain the advantage they had previously taken for granted. After numerous visits to Korea, Kelly Johnson heard firsthand from pilots who urgently demanded a new plane surpassing the Russians in altitude and speed, and they needed it promptly. This directive settled the debate on Lockheed's next project. Recognizing the necessity for a high-altitude, high-speed aircraft, Johnson envisioned a lightweight fighter. Rapidly, he focused on what would become the F-104's most contentious design feature, its remarkably small and thin wing. This departure from conventional design principles, including the abandonment of highly swept shapes favored for supersonic flight, marked a significant departure from prevailing thought. Extensive wind tunnel testing ensued, exploring countless variations around the core concept. Much of this testing concentrated on validating the wing, as numerous doubts were raised about its viability. Skeptics questioned whether the wing could fly at all, whether it could withstand the stresses of high-speed flight, and whether it could carry any meaningful payload, even if it could cope with the speed. It was to be only 7 feet long and to go from being just over 4 inches thick at the fuselage down to under 2 inches thick at the tip. Innovative boundary layer control techniques were implemented to generate sufficient lift within a compact area, enabling short landing distances, albeit without internal provisions for guns or wheels. Numerous aspects of a design underwent rigorous examination in supersonic wind tunnel tests. Of particular focus were the air intakes, where efforts were concentrated on demonstrating that shock waves around the inlets facilitated a controllable and reliable supply to the engines. Recorded footage captured shock waves around the muddle during tests conducted near Mach 2, aimed at determining pressure loads of the ducting under various flight conditions. In addition to wind tunnel testing, the F-104's design was subjected to unconventional trials, involving models mounted on 5-inch Army rockets and was launched across desert terrain. These tests effectively simulated the stress of high speeds and accelerations experienced at lower altitudes, providing insight into both wing shape and construction techniques. Despite their unconventional nature, these rocket firings proved invaluable for the engineering team, facilitating assessments of wing performance and construction under extreme conditions. Similar tests were conducted on the tail, which, like the wing, was designed to be exceptionally thin, prompting skepticism regarding its strength. Once again, these tests proved instrumental in optimizing the design. Within a brief development period, hundreds of models were constructed and tested, allowing for continuous refinement of the aircraft's key components. Generally, little or nothing was added to the original plane, and with the F-104's appearance settled, a contract was issued for 2 planes to be built. The fabrication process commenced with the construction of 3 fuselage modules at full scale, while simultaneously, jigs were assembled to support the entire aircraft structure. Throughout the workshop, activities such as drilling, milling, and cutting of parts began in earnest. The aircraft, produced on an experimental production run, were essentially crafted by hand. Following the receipt of the March 1953 contract, Lockheed swiftly cleared production space, erected a wooden mock-up, and seamlessly transitioned to building the 2 prototypes without interruption. Remarkably, the first flight was scheduled to occur just 12 months after the contract was signed. The achievement within this short time frame was truly astonishing. Unlike designs that had been in development for an extended period, this aircraft came into existence in late 1952, representing a significant leap forward in aviation technology. Despite its advanced nature, its development proceeded at an extraordinary pace. The unconventional wing design, bolted to the fuselage rather than passing through it as with most contemporary fighters, was secured on with heavy-duty precision-forged aluminum fittings, integrating seamlessly within the wing's skins. Johnson's design, though straightforward in some respects, resulted in an aircraft that could soar higher and faster than the MiGs, effectively creating a manned missile. Even the retractable undercarriage, which folded into the fuselage in a fairly complex manner, underwent meticulous testing beyond the norm. The Air Force had no legal document calling for submission of a design anything like the 104, and without the prestige of Lockheed and Kelly Johnson, they may have simply rejected it. Despite the bold claims of anticipated performance, the concept was deemed both logical and exhilarating, leaving no alternative but to proceed with the issuance of the March 1953 contract. While there was no apparent existing slot in inventory for such an aircraft, the lessons learned from the Korean War suggested a compelling argument for its necessity. Nevertheless, the F-104 remained firmly under scrutiny, subject to rigorous evaluation. Construction of the aircraft progressed swiftly, with major subassemblies swiftly coming together, followed by vibration testing conducted at Lockheed's facilities. This testing aimed to establish the natural frequency patterns of entire structure, ensuring its safety for flight. Under tight security, the F-104 prototype departed the Lockheed plant on early morning of February 25, 1954, bound for Edwards Air Force Base. Upon arrival, crews immediately commenced a thorough series of checks and rechecks on the aircraft systems and meticulous preparation for its maiden flight. The engine selected for the prototypes was the Wright J65, which was to prove very inadequate in propelling the 104, Deedon light though it was. The majority of production starfighters were equipped with a General Electric J79 engine, renowned for its higher thrust-to-weight ratio, poised to propel the F-104 beyond twice the speed of sound. As the first flight approached, the rigorous pace of testing persisted, with the engine undergoing thorough run-ups and final preparations. Despite a minor incident during taxi trials on February 28th, when test pilot Tony Levier experienced a brief skip, the F-104 was officially rolled out for its inaugural flight on March 4, 1954. Levier conducted a series of ground tests, ensuring the proper operation of flight controls and systems before confidently taking off for the first time. In the ensuing weeks of test flights, it became apparent that the power plant was unable to fully unleash the Mach 2 potential of the airframe. Nevertheless, the concept of the lightweight fighter was unequivocally validated. Despite the prototype's inability to surpass 1.3 times the speed of sound with this existing engine, the design was deemed successful enough for the Air Force to order 15 additional planes with upgraded power plants, designated as F-104A models. In April 1955, one of these finally took the Starfighter past Mach 2, which was the signal for F-104 production to swing into top gear. For the moment, the intense testing of the two prototypes continued. Both prototypes, depicted here flying in tandem, met tragic ends during the prolonged and troubled test period. Numerous incidents occurred, revealing flaws in the aircraft's engine and equipment, often occurring in situations of significant or imminent danger. In one such early mishap in 1955, Tony Levier encountered trouble while testing the firing of the Starfighter's high-speed cannon during supersonic flight. Following an initially successful firing, Levier prepared for another run to test the gun once more. However, during this attempt, a catastrophic failure occurred, resulting in a complete loss of engine power. With quick thinking, Levier, approximately 40 miles from base, assessed his options. Despite being theoretically high enough to glide back to land, he knew that he had to act swiftly. He approached the lower limits for safe ejection from the aircraft. Before even opening match, a telltale smudge of smoke on the fuselage indicated that the gun had caused the issue. Inspection revealed a hole in the gun compartment caused by a cartridge ejecting backward to the gun baseplate. Relieved to find a malfunction confined to the gun rather than the airframe, engineers promptly rectified the issue, allowing testing to resume. The Starfighter's gun was the Vulcan M61 cannon. 6 feet long and 300 pounds in weight, it was, at that time, claimed to be the fastest firing gun of its type in the world. The M61 cannon boasted an impressive firing rate of 6,020mm cannon shells per minute. Drawing inspiration from the renowned Gatling gun, patented as far back as 1862, the M61 incorporated two key features: a rotating cluster of barrels and external propulsion. By rigidly clamping 6 barrels together, the design provided mutual support, minimalizing the whip effect seen in single-barrel configurations and centralizing recoil. Unlike the hand-cranked Gatling guns of the Civil War era, the M61 was powered electrically by the aircraft, eliminating the need to capture and utilize gun exhaust. This innovation reduced susceptibility to corrosion and fouling, each round fired independently, negating the erratic recoil associated with multi-gun and gas-reloaded systems. Considering the challenges encountered in the early days of integrating the M61 with the F-104, it's important to view these issues as part of the expected learning curve with any advanced equipment. Comparing the M61 Vulcan to the U.S. Air Force's previous preference for machine guns presents difficulties in terms of hitting power, firing rate, and the influence of aircraft dynamics on the gun's operation and overall effectiveness. The Vulcan outstripped previous options to such a degree that meaningful evaluation becomes irrelevant, even with consideration of multiple machine gun installations. In contrast to Kelly Johnson's initial assessment, the military procurement policies of the era demanded multi-role capability. Consequently, despite the F-104's origins as a specialized single-function fighter, provisions were developed to allow it to carry a variety of weapons. While the Starfighter's exceptional performance was acknowledged by the USAF, it wasn't deemed sufficient justification for the project. Lockheed was compelled to explore unconventional attachments for the aircraft in an attempt to persuade the Air Force to continue with the program. One such innovation was the trapeze installation designed to facilitate the carriage and delivery of the Genie nuclear rocket. This ingenious launching mechanism was another manifestation of Kelly Johnson's intuition. When faced with the challenge of ensuring the aircraft could deliver the device over a combat radius of 650 miles, Johnson committed to achieving this within a mere 60 days. Given the already limited space within the Starfighter's fuselage, one of the primary considerations in designing the launcher was ensuring it didn't interfere with the undercarriage. Despite these challenges, the F-104 successfully demonstrated firings of the Genie at altitudes of 56,000 feet and speeds exceeding 1.7 times the speed of sound. However, the aircraft's ability to meet such challenges ultimately did little to sway the Air Force's eventual assessment. Lockheed conducted tests with various weapons delivery attachments and external fuel tanks, aiming to enhance the plane's range and versatility. Despite these efforts, the project faced mounting opposition, and the weight of opinion against it continued to grow. The 104 was very much in the right place at the wrong time. The F-104 Starfighter defied the prevailing trends in the aircraft design of its time. While other fighters were growing in size to accommodate more functionalities, Kelly Johnson opted to strip down the aircraft to its essential components, aiming to achieve Mach 2 speeds with a single afterburning turbojet engine. However, this approach ultimately limited the Starfighter's career with the USAF. There simply wasn't enough space within the aircraft to accommodate the rapidly expanding hardware requirements of radars, aiming controls, and other advanced avionics systems. Despite its unmatched capabilities, which surpassed those of its heavier counterparts, the Starfighter's versatility was often overlooked amidst the general disdain towards lightweight fighters. Criticisms focused on its lack of all-weather capability, lifting power, and range, ultimately leading to the discussion to phase it out of service. The project was set for financial failure, but the work that had started on giving the F-104 greater versatility went on apace, trying to forestall the inevitable and keep the Air Force involved in the plane. The F-104 Starfighter boasted a formidable weapons capability, including standard systems such as the Sidewinder air-to-air Bismarck. It was widely acknowledged as an effective firing platform, excelling in its designated role to air superiority and proving itself to be lethally efficient, akin to a stiletto. From the outset, the Air Force maintained a cautious stance towards the F-104. It was the first aircraft to be procured on a fixed then fly basis. Prior to this, the Air Force had typically accepted new aircraft into service while they were still undergoing testing, adhering to the flying them and fix principle. However, given the radical nature of the F-104, The responsibility for testing and rectifying issues was shifted back to the manufacturer, a practice that has since become standard due to the complexity of modern combat aircraft. As the likelihood of significant USAF orders diminished, a new market quietly emerged in Europe. The remarkable performance of the F-104, coupled with its rapidly expanding tactical capabilities, solidified its reputation as the benchmark design in its class. Despite initial reservations, the F-104's prowess ensured its continued relevance and appeal on its international stage. On top of the expansion and weaponry of the plane, during 1958 and 1959, it was set on a spree of record-setting to reinforce the message of its potency. Even when the new F-4 Phantom II broke some of the Starfighter's records, the F-104 promptly set new marks outside the F-4's ability. In order to address criticism regarding its limited range, the F-104 Starfighter incorporated in-flight refueling technology, a relatively new concept at the time. Considerable effort and resources were invested in integrating this capability into the aircraft. The F-104 had to demonstrate capabilities in ordnance, range, and technical sophistication, features that were initially excluded from the designer's original considerations, but were now essential to meet the potential specifications set by the Western and Luftwaffe. To secure large-scale sales, the aircraft had to overcome the same challenges set by the USAF. It needed to evolve into a multi-role, all-weather strike aircraft and excel in the tasks assigned to it, including seemingly straightforward tasks such as aerial refueling. The German order became increasingly significant, necessitating various unexpected capabilities from the aircraft, such as an enhanced barrier landing strength. The Luftwaffe sought the ability to deploy aircraft away from bases in times of conflict. While the F-104 demonstrated the necessary strength to handle artificially shortened landings, the challenge for the pilots in executing these maneuvers was considerable and posed additional hurdles. In the long term, there were to be few performance targets set for the F-104 that it could not cope with. There was always an uncertainty regarding whether the individual pilots would be able to handle the F-104 effectively, and the necessity for specific training of the pilots for the F-104 signaled a shift in aviation training practices, foreshadowing trends that would become more prevalent in the future. While a properly trained pilot flying a well-maintained F-104 was not at risk, the combination of an unprepared pilot and the aircraft could prove to be lethal. The survival of the Starfighter became contingent upon sales in the overseas markets, with the development of the aircraft driven by the specified and perceived needs of NATO clients. For example, if Germany required short takeoff and landing capabilities, Lockheed would showcase successful crash barrier landings and zero-length launch capabilities. In one instance, the truck-mounted rocket-propelled launch system was demonstrated with an F-84. Both unmanned and pilot launches were executed satisfactorily. Although this development didn't yield any immediate practical applications, the potential for successful employment with the Starfighter was seen as a valuable asset to the project in the eyes of the Luftwaffe. With West Germany being the border between Eastern and Western spheres of influence, it was essential that no less than the other European states she retrieve her power as a military force, not only in weaponry, but in industrial capacity. Unlike the aftermath of the First World War, there was a perceived need for a strong Germany within the Western Alliance, and Germany's concerns became pivotal considerations for the strategists at Lockheed working on selling the F-104. Given NATO's need for new weaponry and the desire to standardize armaments across a number of countries, focusing on Germany's potential requirements was a logical approach. If Lockheed could fulfill Germany's call for new equipment, it was anticipated that many others would follow suit. Although the F-104 never saw regular use of rocket-assisted takeoffs, 104Ns were utilized for exposing potential astronauts to hydrogen peroxide thrust controls at altitudes exceeding 100,000 feet. One of the developments that revitalized the F-104's concept was the introduction of the two-seat variant. It was customary for U.S. fighters to have a trainer or reconnaissance version with 2 seats, and the F-104 followed suit. While the Germans primarily sought a ground strike aircraft, they also desired a versatile platform, prompting serious consideration of a twin-seat variant. As part of Lockheed's sales strategy, a production offset package was proposed, involving the manufacturing of planes by consortia of European aviation companies. This approach aimed to not only secure sales but also foster collaboration and investment within European aerospace industries. The shot in arm for European aerospace capability from the construction of these new factories was one of the declining factors in the successful campaign. The plane itself performed very well. In the fly-offs, the F-104's superiority over the other contenders was evident, almost to the point of being a walkover. The competition for the contract was fierce, with some highly capable aircraft, notably the British Lightning, among the contenders. However, political considerations seemed to have played a role, and by the time the contract was awarded, the F-104 had demonstrated itself as the standout performer. Despite its unquestionable performance, the F-104's reputation as a high-performance aircraft had its drawbacks. Its demanding nature meant that it could be unforgiving to inexperienced or careless pilots. There were strict limits on what a pilot could push the F-104 to do. Over the course of the development period, which was plagued by various challenges, over 8,000 flights were conducted in the test series using 52 aircraft. Unfortunately, several aircraft were lost due to equipment malfunctions and pilot errors. The F-104 represented a convergence of 2 eras in aviation technology, with much of the technology being new and untried. This juxtaposition is illustrated humorously by the sight of the F-104's streamlined nose attached to the front of a DC-3 during avionics testing. While the F-104 was not the first U.S. designated aircraft to prioritize lightweight and compact design, Its development marked a significant step forward in this regard. For instance, the Bell XP-77 had nearly entered production during the Second World War, demonstrating a similar focus on lightweight design principles. Their win, too, was not without precedent, being very similar to that of the X-3. The F-104 Starfighter was undeniably revolutionary in many aspects, yet as the program progressed, it became mired in controversy, much of which extended beyond issues with the airframe itself. This controversy led to the unfair dismissal of the Starfighter as a lemon. The USAF withdrew its F-104s from operational service after just 2 years, although some were later deployed during the Vietnam War, primarily serving as high-flying escorts for B-52s and IMBA-level tactical support strikes. Meanwhile, the USSR, having learned valuable lessons from the Korean War, developed a MiG-17 in response to changing combat requirements. Unlike the F-104, which prioritized speed and climb performance, the MiG-17 was designed as a short-range interception fighter with high-speed capabilities, rapid climb rates, and agile maneuverability. Equipped with air-to-air missiles, internal cannon, and a light ground support bomb load, the MiG-17 was essentially an updated version of the MiG-15, featuring improved handling and more swept-wing design. Despite being considered theoretically obsolete upon its proposal, the MiG-17 proved to be a highly effective aircraft. US thinking was totally different. If we ignore the F-104 and look at the other Sentry fighters, we find that they were all much larger planes. They also shared a commitment to state-of-the-art technology with varying degrees of success. The F-100 Super Sabre, F-101 Voodoo, F-102-106 Delta Dagger Delta Dart also limited service in Vietnam and eventually faded into history. Each of these aircraft, in its own way, epitomized the concept of the fighter as a standoff missile launch platform. Initially conceived as specialized aircraft for specific roles within the fighter spectrum, such distinctions blurred over time as each aircraft evolved to possess multi-role capabilities. The F-100 and F-101, in particular, diversified into different roles as their careers progressed. Among the Sentry series aircraft, it is doubtful that any could have effectively countered the F-104 Starfighter. Even many more modern aircraft would have struggled against the F-104's capabilities. The overseas sales program for the F-104 not only saved the project from financial disaster, but also turned it into a remarkable success for Lockheed. With production deals in place, the F-104 entered service with 14 air forces, becoming one of the closest approximations to its standard Western fighter plane. Customized fire control systems and other controls tailored for each country's version of the F-104 allow for versatile use in various roles. Despite its reputation for demanding respect and care from pilots, the F-104 also gained renown as one of the most formidable aircraft in the air. Customer air forces around the world employed the F-104 in diverse roles and continued its development until the last ones were built in 1983. As presumably everybody knows, the Germans, whose orders had been so critical, initially had a fairly miserable time with the plane, losing over 200 of them in accidents. The reason for this are many, but little blame can be appointed to the plane itself. The early deployment disaster with the Luftwaffe had complex roots, and it took time to address the underlying causes. The West Germans experienced a similar, albeit shorter, struggle when introducing the F-104 into their inventory. However, none of the other nations that purchased a Starfighter had experiences remotely resembling the issues faced by Germany. It was evident that the problems primarily stemmed from the specific circumstances within the Luftwaffe at the time. To counter the mounting negative publicity surrounding the F-104, Lockheed maintained its own private Starfighter as a promotional tool. This aircraft flew extensively around the world in search of orders and was later used in PR efforts to salvage the reputation of the plane. In this aircraft, Jackie Conquered, renowned for her achievements in the Bendix races of the 1930s and her service with the Women's Air Force Service Pilots during World War II, became the first female Western pilot to break the speed of sound. Kelly Johnson's design team transitioned from a plane with almost no wing to one with extraordinarily long wings, the U-2 spy plane, and then the remarkable Mach 3 SR-71 Blackbird, showcasing their innovative and groundbreaking approach to aircraft design and engineering. Both of these aircraft bear some superficial resemblances to the 104. Certainly comparing the three to the other planes of their time, it's easy to see them as stablemates, products of the one vision. Kelly Johnson, the mastermind behind these groundbreaking aircraft, retired universally respected as one of the giants of aviation. Throughout his illustrious career, his designs were consistently at the cutting edge of their time, often ahead of their time. One of Johnson's later endeavors was the redesign of the F-104, which became known as the Lancer. This revamped version, featuring larger wings and enhanced maneuverability, was proposed in a fighter competition that ultimately led to the mass production of the F-15. However, the Lancer proposal did not receive serious consideration and no aircraft were built. Johnson maintained that the Lancer would have outperformed the F-15, with some experts agreeing and even suggesting that the F-104 itself could have posed a challenge to the F-15 in an aerial combat. Despite the F-104's early struggles, including engine availability issues and the unreliability of the J-79 engine, its testing and development phase set new standards in aviation. Major challenges like pitch-up were overcome through rigorous testing and refinement, resulting in a powerful and reliable, albeit eager and somewhat temperamental aircraft. Despite its enduring reputation for controversy, the F-104 ultimately vindicated the decisions of its creators. Throughout its lengthy career, it carved out a unique and significant place in the annals of aviation history.
From the sun-baked Mojave Desert at Edwards Air Force Base, California, comes a new assault on the heavens. The machine, a Lockheed F-104 Starfighter, a silver dart designed to fly higher and faster than any adversary. Its mission, to reclaim the world altitude record for the United States Air Force. In the cockpit, Captain Joe B. Jordan, an experimental test pilot with nerves of steel. He pushes the throttle forward, and the supersonic fighter claws its way skyward. On the way to the top, another record falls. The world's time to climb. He points the nose higher still. Through the thin, cold veil of the upper atmosphere he climbs, far beyond the reach of ordinary aircraft. The official altitude, confirmed by the National Aeronautics Association, 103,395 feet. A new mark for man and machine, shattering the previous records. Submitted to the world for recognition, this flight stands as a powerful testament to American air power and the courage of the men who fly for freedom.